I have in front of me a carefully researched and well-written book by Robert Bowman and Ed Komosevsky, and the title is Putting Jesus in His Place, the Case for the Deity of Christ. I hope that Robert Bowman will not think that I'm trying to put him in his place. That's certainly not our intention. My intention here is to open the conversation, which I think needs to be a public one, based on what Robert Bowman says in regard to Jesus using the Shema of Israel, the famous Creed of Israel in Deuteronomy 6, repeated in Mark chapter 12, verses 28 and following. So Robert Bowman here says something which I find extremely provocative and interesting. And I'm genuinely interested to know how he will answer this point, because I think it is the point. We all accept Jesus as our rabbi and teacher. So the words of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, are obviously foundational, fundamental to all of us who are claiming to follow Messiah. And Robert Bowman very nicely begins by saying on page 166, if Judaism has a creed, it would be the words of Deuteronomy 6. If they have a creed, they don't have creeds quite in the same way as the Christian church, but there is a creedal statement in Judaism. There's a core concept, an absolutely non-negotiable concept in regard to who God is. And so Robert Bowman acknowledges that. And he quotes then Deuteronomy 6 about the Lord our God being one Lord, one Yahweh. Jews affirmed the Shema. Jesus, he says, affirmed that Shema in Mark 12:28 to 30. Therefore, Jesus, in his definition of God, note, because this is what this creed is thoroughly in the mainstream of Judaism. With this, I absolutely agree. That's on page 166 of Robert Bowman. But then let me ask my friend Robert Bowman flat out for a straight answer. How in the world can you affirm that Jesus was a unitary monotheist, describing and substantiating the creed of Judaism? How can you affirm that on one hand, and then say that you, as a follower of Jesus, are free not to follow that same creed that Jesus affirmed? This is the question, I think, that needs to be thoroughly examined publicly. How in the world, then, can Jesus be a unitary, non-Trinitarian monotheist in the mainstream of Judaism? And surely everybody knows that Judaism never believed in the Trinity. How can that be so? And at the same time, how can Robert Bowman and the Trinitarian camp be free to depart from that unitary monotheism so clearly agreed by Jesus with a fellow Jew in Mark 12? Note how well that's done. A fellow Jew comes and says, what is the greatest commandment that we mustn't get wrong? And out comes this definition of God, which the Jew then affirms, which Jesus affirms. They bat it forth. They dialogue over this central creed for a few seconds, and the unanimity is patent. The Jew, Jesus, and the Jew scribe are totally at one on the proposition that holds the universe together, that God is one Yahweh, one person, is not a Trinitarian creed. So that's my challenge then. Why then is Robert Bowman not following the teaching of Jesus at the core of true faith? Now, the second question might be this, that referring to Luke 1:35, where the angel Gabriel explains that Mary's begotten child, the one begotten in her, is going to be the Son of God, called the Son of God, is going to be the Son of God, is going to be called the Son of God, precisely because of the miracle of Mary. And on page 166, no, that's not right, on page 88, Robert Bowman tries to draw a distinction between being called the Son of God and being the Son of God. That will not work. In the Gospels, we have one Gospel saying, blessed are the meek, or one of these qualities of Christianity. They will be the sons of God, and the parallel says they'll be called the sons of God. There's no difference. I refer to the famous Birth Narratives book by Raymond Brown, where he explicitly says there's no difference. If you're called the Son of God, that's what you are. Now, surely that verse in Luke 1:35, straight from the lips of Gabriel to a young Jewish girl, free of the nightmare of complexity that was involved in arriving at the creeds of the church over 300 years, Surely that ought to be foundational. He's the Son of God, précisément pourquoi. That's what the French do with that. Precisely because of dioke in Greek. I'm using the modern Greek pronunciation. Precisely because of the miracle. That's why he's the Son of God. Well, yes, because God's his Father by miracle. How wonderfully simple, unifying, strengthening, empowering that text would be.